Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. We are round one in the books, and round 2 and 3 are upon us tonight. Just a friendly reminder, if you're new to the channel, make sure to like and hit that subscribe button so you miss any of our NFL draft or New York Jets content. But also, make sure to like and subscribe because tonight we will be going live after the Jets' final pick, when that may be. Of course, they could potentially trade down tonight from the third rounder. So whenever they are done picking tonight, we will go live, break down the picks they made on day 2, and look forward to day 3. And of course, wrap up day 3 after the whole draft and look at the undrafted period. But today I wanted to get into a little bit of a primer for tonight because the Jets have a big night ahead of them for this regime. They've got the tackle, they got the offensive line, but there is still a ton of needs on this team. So what I'm going to do is go through all the different positions I could see the Jets potentially addressing tonight. I'm going to go position by position, but I'm also going to include some big popular names out there that are at the top of a lot of boards right now, and some people might link them to the Jets, but I am doubtful they will actually end up on the Jets. And I'll try to give you a nice range too. Guys I could see them targeting with pick number 42, picks in the second round, and people to target in the third round potentially as well. So we're going to cover a wide variety here. And again, if there's a certain prospect that's really piqued your interest, let me know in the comments below. Use that super chat feature to jump to the front of the line and to guarantee that your comment is read. So let's start with the quarterback position. And let's, of course, talk with the biggest name in the entire NFL draft right now that's still on the board, and that's Shedeur Sanders. I think that this is a easy one for me, which is even if he is there at pick 42, if he's there at pick 42, I would look to try to trade out of that pick. But I get the sense that the Jets are not interested in Sanders. And it's simply because when you look at the quarterbacks they did a lot of work on, he really wasn't one of them. And even today, you would think there'd be a little bit of a buzz from the New York media potentially. There'd be a little bit of a buzz from the Jets beat writers and trying to link Shedeur to the Jets. And I really have not seen anything about that. And the other thing with Shedeur Sanders is you had 32 teams pass on him in night 1. If the value is there and the Jets decide to select him, would I be upset? No. Again, I feel that Aaron Glenn, if he would make that decision, would look at it and say, this is a guy that, yes, I understand there's a lot of noise around him, but I believe he will fit in our system. He will fit into our culture. But I'm very doubtful. I actually don't think he gets to 42 at the Jets. I think some team is going to come up to get him. I'm very curious tonight if Cleveland will just draft him outright. They have 2 picks at the top of the second round just to have a quarterback competition. I could see the Raiders, who are picking at 37, to get a little bit of buzz there in Las Vegas. I just don't see him being there 42, but by some chance he was. If I'm the Jets, I would try to trade out of that pick to get more assets, but I don't think he's on their radar. A quarterback that I do think is potentially on the Jets' radar tonight, and I feel it would be more round 3 in an ideal world, although I will say I do think there is a scenario where I do not see the Jets drafting a quarterback at all in this draft. I could see Jalen Milroe being a target for the Jets. And one of the reasons is they've done a ton of homework with him at the Combine, at the Senior Bowl. They've had him for a lot of workouts. I think they love the tools he brings to the table, and they feel that they can develop him and sit him behind Justin Fields. For me, 42 feels early, but if they feel he's a franchise quarterback, then you do what you have to do to get your franchise quarterback. But I also think there's a world tonight where Shedeur isn't the first quarterback off the board in round 2. I mean, Shao could be off the board. I think Milroe could be off the board. But Milroe is probably the name. If you had to ask me if there's a quarterback that could end up with the Jets from day 2, it's probably Milroe because of the physical tools he brings, because of the upside he could potentially have. And yes, I understand there's a lot that needs to be developed in his game. But for me, he is the one quarterback that if his name's called tonight, I would not be fully surprised. Let's shift gears and let's go to the skill positions because I do think this is going to be a very fascinating day for the skill positions for the Jets. Potentially, both picks tonight could technically be skill positions. I could see a combination wide receiver, tight end, or tight end, wide receiver, potentially. So we'll stay with the offensive side of the ball. and then we will get to the defense later. So there's some very fascinating names, especially at the top of the second round, that I'm curious about the New York Jets. So let's start with Iowa State. I think Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are both intriguing players. Noel from Iowa State is a bit smaller, again, 5'10", but an incredibly explosive receiver. I really like what he can bring to the table. I could see him easily being a number 2 receiver. Higgins, to me, though, is probably the one that would fit the Jets the best because he has the size at 6'4", 214. He's got a very good speed combo. When I watch his tape, a receiver he really reminds me of is Nico Collins. I think that's the type of receiver I see in him. He only had 3 drops last year at Iowa State on 50-50 balls. He's sure-handed. He's highly productive, 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. To me, he could be someone that easily is there at 42. And if the Jets draft him, I think you feel pretty good about the Jets' 1-2 receiver room, and you feel a lot better about maybe bringing along someone like a Malachi Corley or taking a swing at another receiver later in this draft. For the third-round target in my last mock draft, and I've had him in the third-round range, is Kyle Williams from Washington State. Look, very high-character player, explosive player. He's a bit raw, but I do see him developing to a very good number 2. Like Noel, a bit more on the smaller side, not exactly a big-bodied wide receiver, which I think the Jets room is kind of looking for. But for me, I think Williams in that third-round range, especially if you go tight end in round number 2, could be a very intriguing play for the Jets in round 3. And he's the name I would definitely keep an eye on out of Washington State. So let's move to the tight end position. And if you follow the channel, you've probably heard this name ad nauseum because it feels like every mock draft I've had the Jets taking this player at 42. And that's Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU, the number 3 tight end on my board. And he's someone that can come in right away, be this team's number 2 target behind Garrett Wilson. He needs to develop in the blocking area, but I look at him as he's a solid starter, can come in, has very good skill set, not the biggest burner in the world, but will be a highly productive tight end. I really love him. He's a plug-and-play starter. And I think of all the tight ends left, he's probably the safest of all the tight ends. So I would not be surprised if he's there at pick 42. Another pick I could see ranging between rounds 2 and 3, probably more likely closer in the second round, is Elijah Arroyo, the tight end out of Miami. You look at the size, 6'5", 250, a little bit more raw than a Mason Taylor, but the big thing you look at is the speed. He has downfield ability and ability to stretch a defense that's very rare at the tight end position. So it will be very curious, especially if both players on the board, who the Jets could take. If you want instant production and the safest pick, I think that's Mason Taylor. But if you want to take a bit of a swing at upside, Elijah Arroyo could easily be there as well. It kind of reminds me of what happened last night in round 1 when you had Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And it feels like the Bears feel Loveland has a little bit more of the upside over Tyler Warren. And that could be a case tonight. If Elijah Arroyo goes before Mason Taylor, a team could view him with more upside. Now, for the third round target, if the Jets, let's say they go with Higgins in round number 2, I think Terrence Ferguson from the tight end from Oregon is a definite possibility. He's someone that this team has had their radar on. They've done a lot of work with him. Very good athlete, played a lot of high school basketball. You look, he had 25% of his catches were over 20 yards. Very good blocker. Finds a way to stall defenders. I think Ferguson's one of those players, when you look at the traits for him, there isn't anything he does exceptional. There's not something that you look at. He's not exceptionally fast. He's not an exceptionally blocker. He doesn't have the best footwork. But the one thing about him is he's solid in every area. You look at Ferguson, he's just a solid tight end in all the different phases. And even in the third round, I could see him being a plug-and-play starter for this Jets team coming right in. Before we get to the defense, just a reminder to put in the comment section the players you would like to see the Jets target. If you're joining us after the live stream, you can still do it at any time. Make sure to put your comments in there. If you want to jump to the front of the line, use that super chat feature. Also, keep in mind we will be coming on the air tonight after the Jets make their final pick. So if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button so you can come on the air tonight and participate with all the other great Jets fans who will be joining us tonight, and it will definitely be a fun show. So let's get to the defense. Let's start with the edges. And there's one edge to me that really is exciting. Now, full transparency, I doubt he's going to be there at 42. But the fact that Mike Green from Marshall is still in this draft is shocking to me. And again, I think a lot of the GMs in the first round went with guys that played at the FBS level, the players from Alabama, the Georgias, the bigger conference players. I think Green has all the upside. I feel a lot of teams are down looking that he went to Marshall. To me, if the Jets could get him at 42, I understand this team needs playmakers. I understand he wouldn't be the biggest need per se, but having another great edge rusher to pair with Jermaine Johnson, to pair with Will McDonald, to have that rotation, to have someone that can spell out these guys, to have someone in this deep rotation is incredibly exciting. He was a highly, highly productive player. Now, I don't see the Jets trading up for him, but if there's some scenario where he's there at 42, I'll be honest, I think he's one of the top 15 players in this draft. And if the Jets in the first 42 picks have the chance to walk away with two of the top 15 players in the draft, regardless of position, I think they have to do it. I don't think Green gets the Jets, but if he's there at 42, I would run to the podium to pick him. Next, we have my other defensive end target, another familiar name on the show for those who've been watching the mock drafts, a guy the Jets have done a ton of work on. I think he could go in the fourth round, but there's a chance you could see his name being called tonight around the 70th pick. And that's Elijah Roberts, the edge from SMU. He's a versatile player. Reminds me a lot of JFM. Lines up on the outside, early downs, can kick inside on those passing downs. The big thing I love, he wins with power. 131 pressures over the last 2 years, which led FBS, which to me is an incredible stat. High motor guy, wins with power. Every down he plays like it's his last. I love the energy he brings, and I think he is a guy that Aaron Glenn's going to absolutely love to have on this defense. I think the Jets in a perfect world would like to take him at the top of day 3. But I'm just letting you know, guys, there's a chance you could hear his name be called in the third round tonight, and don't be surprised. So let's move into the interior of the defensive line. A name I think you could hear called tonight is Darius Alexander from Toledo. I mean, you look at the sack production in the collegiate seasons he's had. He's been one of the best interior pass rushers. He's got an incredible skill set. He fires off the ball. He can get off blocks. He can win with a push-pull move. He gets up the field. This, to me, could create an incredible tandem on the inside with Quinnen and Darius Alexander. I love this kid's upside. I think he could be a guy that the Jets bring in tonight to just really invigorate that defensive line. And if you put Alexander in the middle next to Quinnen and you have Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson coming off the edges, that is going to be one heck of a defensive line. And I do think the Jets want to win and build through the trenches, and that is something they could definitely do. The next name I don't think necessarily will be a second-round pick right at 42. I think maybe could be a name the Jets trade back a little bit or in the third round, and that's Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle at Texas A&M. Very productive 3-year starter. Played a 3-role technique as a senior. You looked at him. He came off the edge a lot in college as an underclassman. He's bulked up, put on weight. He got up to about 290. Again, a little bit on the lighter side for a defensive tackle for what the Jets probably are looking for. Hoping he had a little bit more weight, but he did make a great transition from the edge to the inside. Can move all over this defensive line. Like I was saying earlier with Roberts, could maybe be a guy that lines up on the edge early, comes inside later, pass rushing downs. He's a player that the Jets have done a lot of homework on too as well. They've done a lot on Turner. I think he could be a guy that goes off the board tonight as well. And then finally, my third round target would be Joshua Farmer, the defensive tackle from Florida State. I love this kid's tape. I really think he's got a great first step. He's a dynamic player on that defensive line. And I think he's going to fall. In a lot of defensive tackle drafts, he probably would be a second round player. But because it's so loaded, he falls into the third round range. And if he's sitting there when the Jets are back on the board with the third pick in this draft, I think it might be hard for them to pass on this kid. I think you could see a scenario where it's playmaker, defensive tackle. I don't think defensive tackle goes first tonight unless it's Alexander. But those are a couple of the names that I could see, especially on the beef side, getting drafted. Let's go to a name that I've seen been thrown out a lot today, and that's Will Johnson from Michigan. And I see a lot of Jet fans on social media being excited, talking about pairing him with Sauce. The problem I look with Will Johnson, and I do believe this is part of the reason he fell, is again the injury issue last year. But here's the biggest problem that I see, especially with the Jets. He played a predominantly zone system. If this was Robert Saleh's defense last year, I think Johnson would definitely be a talking point right now. But Aaron Glenn wants to play a lot more man coverage. And when you look at Johnson, he was only asked to do it about 15% of the time last year, man-to-man coverage in that Michigan defense. So he was in zone 85% of the time. I don't think he meshes with this defense well. So even at 42, I think it's one of those things where he can still be a very good player. I think he's going to be very scheme fit. If he goes to a great zone team, I think he'll do very well. The Jets, though, for me, it just doesn't seem like a good scheme fit, square peg, round hold kind of deal. So I can easily see a scenario tonight where he's sitting there at 42. The Jets don't take him. And I do think there could be a portion of this fan base that's going to be like, why are we passing on this great corner that we could pair with Sauce? And I get the idea in principle. I mean, it's a good idea on paper. But when I look at the production and I look at the fit, I don't think Johnson, even if he's there at 42, will be a fit for the Jets. But the last position I want to focus on is safety. So a couple of interesting safeties here, especially with 42. You have Nick, I can never say Nick's last name right. Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina, so I'm just going to call him Nick. Look, he is an interesting player. Probably many consider one of the top safeties in this draft, not the top safety, especially with his size at 6'3". You look at the reaction he has, you look at the physical skills he has a lot of great tools. I think the reason he's fallen is I don't think he's fully polished. He's someone that struggles with the read, someone that struggles with the angles at times. But you do look, he gets back into the play quick. He's got a lot of speed. And the one thing I like, he can blitz. He can come up the field. He can be a solid run defender. For me, he can come in and be this team's starting safety, and not only be a starting safety, but be a real tone setter in this defense. I think he's someone to definitely keep an eye on, especially at 42. That could be great value for the Jets. And I know safety probably isn't the flashiest position. It probably isn't the position that jumps out as a position of need. But if you add him to the back end, this could be a very good back end of the defense. The corner room's very good already, but you add this safety, it could be even better. I also could see Xavier Watts, the Notre Dame safety. You know, he is one of those guys, he's just a playmaker. And you look at his instincts, he's an incredibly smart player. That you look at the skill sets for him, he's not the fastest guy, not the biggest guy, but you look, he has those instincts you can't teach. He's incredibly aggressive. He makes a quick play. He's decisive on defense. He's a very heady, smart safety. And you look, this is a guy you want to see. I probably don't want him playing up against the line. You probably don't want him in man-on-man coverage, but he can play center field a bit. He can come up and blitz. He can play in the run defense. This could be another guy that the Jets look at to plug and play right away. And one of the last guy I have here for safety, and I think this is my third round selection, would be Kevin Winston Jr., the Penn State safety. Look, this guy did not miss a tackle last year in college. He's been incredibly productive at Penn State. He's a guy that can do just about everything at the safety position. And I actually feel really great. If they walked away with him in the third round tonight, I think I would feel really good about the Jets safety position. And there's a lot of safeties I could also see on day 3. The big thing I'm curious to see is how the Jets attack the safety position, because they have a lot of guys that can play some coverage. Are they looking for a guy that can come downhill? Are they looking for a more traditional strong safety? We're going to find out over the next 48 hours what the Jets are looking for in that safety room. And I do think how they address the safety position is going to give a little bit more insight on how this defense is going to operate for the 2025 season. Again, guys, those are the big targets I have for tonight. Now, the two big names, and again, I see your comments, super chat, jump the front of the line. The two big names tonight, because I get when we get closer, there's going to be a lot of discussion. I think the two big names that are still left on the board are Shedeur Sanders and Will Johnson. I highly doubt they will be New York Jets. For the quarterback situation with Shedeur, I feel the Jets have done a lot more homework on other guys, and they haven't done as much on Shedeur. Now, there could have been a scenario where they didn't think this would be possible to draft a guy like him, and maybe they want a guy like him with a more accurate arm long term. But I just don't see that happening, especially with Aaron Glenn right now. I feel Aaron Glenn's philosophy is build out this roster around Justin Fields, see what happens, in worst case, draft a quarterback next year. Although Jalen Milroe could be a possibility, especially if he's there in the third round. I do think the Jets could draft a quarterback. If I had to put money on it, I think they do it day 3, early day 3 maybe, or maybe take a guy like Cam Miller from North Dakota State in the back end of like round 5 or round 6. But those are the two names that are going to get a lot of hype. And the one thing I would say, if Shedeur's there at 42, I think in a perfect world, you would love to trade back and try to gain an extra pick, like slide back and maybe get a compensation pick, like one of those late third rounders. The hard part is I'm not sure who's interested. The teams I think are interested are in front of the Jets. I think it's Cleveland and Vegas. Like, I look behind the Jets. The only team I could maybe look at, maybe Dallas, but that would only drop them 2 spots. So the most you're getting is maybe a late day 3 pick. I mean, the Rams at 46, I don't know if they're going to do that or if they're going to look to build up their roster. Because again, I think they're going to try to push for a Super Bowl run this year. Does Miami get frisky at 48? But then if you're the Jets, you're not training with Miami and helping them out. Seattle at 50? Probably not. I mean, Seattle has 50 and 52. I mean, maybe they use one of those picks to come up. I just keep going down the board, and I just don't see a team that really makes a lot of sense to me of who's going to draft him. I really don't see a team that really intrigues me, especially after the Jets. And if Shedeur doesn't go by pick 37 tonight, which is 2 Cleveland picks, 33 and 36, and Vegas at 37, and especially if he doesn't go at 40 to New Orleans, I really don't know where he's going to go. I really don't. And with Johnson, to me, it's more the fit. I think Johnson is an incredible, talented defensive player. If you ask a lot of people, he could probably be considered one of the best corners in this draft. He's definitely top 3 coming into this season. Many of us thought he would be the first corner off the board, had a tough final season at Michigan. But the thing with him, with Johnson, is I just look at someone that while he's comfortable with press coverage and he's a physical cornerback, he does struggle. I mean, you look at his speed, he's average speed despite his height, has trouble getting back. Quarterbacks can bait him on double moves, and he doesn't have the speed to recover. Not great tackling. I just look at someone, too, that's also had a couple of injuries. I mean, you look the last couple seasons, several injuries. He had a scope in 2022. He sat out the Big Ten championship in 23 with an injury and missed 7 games last year with a shoulder injury and 6 with the toe. And one of the biggest things is availability. And I think a lot of teams are looking at it and going, well, if you can't be healthy and you can't be on the field in a college game where the guys are a lot smaller and not as fast, how are you going to survive in the National Football League? But let's get to your comments again, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Danger Zone, again, was on his show last night. Check him out. We had a lot of fun, especially talking about everything from the draft to professional wrestling. I mean, I believe in a lot of things. I believe the Jets will get this draft right, but I also believe in Joe Hendry. Danger knows what I'm talking about. Will the Browns draft a QB, even though they're poised to get one next year? Danger Zone, they could. The problem with Cleveland is they're going to tell us a lot with these first 2 picks tonight, because the smart thing would be what you're saying. You just take Shedeur. Shedeur, even if he plays well and you love a quarterback next year, you take the quarterback, and now you have a good trade chip potentially in Shedeur, especially if you can prove he can play at the NFL level. My thought process is this. Cleveland had chances last night to potentially draft him. They could have traded back out of 5. They did. The other big thing, too, is I don't think it was a secret that the Giants fell in love with Jackson Dart. Cleveland had a lot more draft ammo to go up and get Jackson Dart. They didn't. If they take him with the second round pick tonight, maybe that's something. But I almost get the feeling that Cleveland now, they've told you their plan. They got a first-round pick next year. They're planning to draft a quarterback next year. So what do you do this year? This year, you fill out your roster. You fill out your roster with talented players, and you go out there and you fill out this roster. Like, look at Cleveland right now. I don't think there's a running back right now, but if you look at the best available, there are some intriguing players that are still on the board. They need a wide receiver. Could one of the 2 Iowa State kids go right now and be one of those receivers? They need an offensive tackle. I think we saw a run on the offensive tackle position, but there's still some intriguing players still on this board. I mean, could Ursuley from Minnesota be one of those ones picked right now? I mean, I think that when I look at the Cleveland Browns, they could go one of 2 ways. They can get Shedeur in a player, or they can just get 2 players. Rico. Again, Rico, thank you for the pronunciation. Imanwari. Again, Imanwari. I got to say that a couple times, Rico the Pup. It's hard to remember all the names or the pronunciations. I can agree with just about anyone as long as it's not a reach. I've said that this is a 2-year retool at best. Just get quality players. And look, there's still a lot of quality players on this board. I mean, I was saying, I feel that one of the best players, one of my favorite players in this draft, Mike Green's on the board. Now, I don't think he gets to 42, but the players I look at right now, and again, Shedeur, I also don't think makes it as well to 42. I look at Imanwari. I think he could be there. I feel he goes. I mean, could they get frisky and go with Donovan Izuraku, the edge from BC? Mason Taylor obviously will in play. An interesting player, too, is Scheswinger from UCLA, the linebacker. I don't think for the Jets, but I think Cleveland with danger zone, that could be an interesting play there. Maybe Caleb Johnson goes to Cleveland. He's a dynamic Iowa State running back. There's still a lot of talent on this board right now. There's still some good safeties. There's still some good defensive tackles still on this board. Look, there's a chance, like, especially if Imanwari's still there at 42, you can make the case that the Jets potentially in the first 42 picks could have arguably walked out with what a lot of people think is the best safety prospect and what many think is the best tackle prospect, and that would be an incredible haul. All right, Adam is all that. And again, great picture there, Adam. Round 2, best tight end. Round 3, fastest receiver. Round 4, biggest DT. Round 5, quickest DN. Round 6, cover safety. Round 7, best linebacker available. So the Jets do not have a 7th round pick, Adam. They do have 2 picks in round 5 and 2 picks in round 6. So we'll condense that. I mean, it's not the worst draft strategy in the world. And again, this seems like a pretty good one. Speed, I'm curious to see how the Jets attack the wide receiver position, because there's a couple of interesting players. They have some bigger body wide receivers on the outside, but there's also some good speedsters in this draft too. So I'm really interested how they're going to attack that. But again, I mean, Adam, I think that is easily a draft strategy that could work very well. And again, appreciate the comment. Again, guys, keep those comments coming. I think I would take Makuba or Watts. They are both super instinctive and versatile, can play a high two and excel in robber positions and cover one. Need a guy that can be interchangeable in AG's defense. Look, if either of them are there, I do think they will definitely be in play. A lot of this also comes down to how they are going to attack. And again, Tony Pauline on Twitter says that the Jets are targeting Mason Taylor at 42. I also think Mason Taylor, as much as I like Mason Taylor, I think there's a good chance he doesn't get to 42. Breece Hall, I think, is doing some recruiting for the Jets. He tweeted 14 minutes ago, would love to see a lot of clones' names get called tonight. So I think he's saying to the Jets, hey, we got two Iowa State receivers there. But again, I don't think Sanders makes it to the Jets. And even is there, I just don't think he fits in the room. And if the Jets do take a wide receiver, let's hope it is better than the last couple they've taken. I mean, the day 2 wide receiver curse has not been great. I mean, you look at the last 4 receivers the Jets took are Darius Stewart in 2017, Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, Malachi Corley. Although I still think Devin Smith out of Ohio State, of all those receivers, was probably the most disappointing of all of them. Or Stephen Hill. Stephen Hill is a funny one. It's always felt bad for Stephen Hill because the problem with some of the media coverage of the draft is people want the comps. And I like to say they're somewhat similar, but whenever someone gives a comp to one of the best players in the game, that is going to draw a lot of problems. And with Stephen Hill, I always remember they were referring to him as the mini Megatron because he came from Georgia Tech and he had a similar size and build. And I'm like, he's not Calvin Johnson. And the problem with Georgia Tech, too, is they ran that option system, so the receivers don't get a ton of reps, so it's hard to get their film. But I always felt bad for him because I did like his athleticism. I think he needed time to develop. But unfortunately, when the Jets drafted him, they need him to come in and be dynamic right away. And unfortunately, with a lot of these receivers, I think the Jets were looking them to be a great option right away. I think at least this year, there's a chance with all the running they're going to do, they can ease in the rookie receivers to get more quality reps this year. I'm guessing the knee issue you're talking about, Will Johnson. I do. Or is that what you're talking about, Rico? Just so I can clarify. But again, there's a lot of guys tonight that I think the Jets can target. Quarterback, I've come to the determination. Again, we don't know what's going to happen in the draft. I've come to the determination. The guy I think the Jets would like tonight is Jalen Milroe in the 3rd round. I don't think he makes it there. I think that they're going to be content filling out this roster and then going for the quarterback next year. I'm also kind of curious to see, is there a quarterback that the Jets are hoping falls to day 3? I know they've done a lot of work on Quinn Ewers. Can he be there in round 4 for them? Could a Kyle McCord from Syracuse be there at the top of the 4th round for them? I know they've done a lot of work on Cam Miller. I think they would like to get him as an undrafted free agent, but there's a chance they snag him in the 6th round. That to me is kind of what the Jets feel like they're going to do at the quarterback. I think the first couple rounds today is going to be focused on building out this roster, but the only thing that could change that is if the Jets trade back. If the Jets trade back from 42 to get more assets, and especially if they get more assets today, if they have 3 picks today, then maybe they draft a quarterback because they were able to recoup a pick and still get 2 players that are going to help the roster, but also get a quarterback. I don't think they trade up from 42. I think if anything, the Jets will trade down. I feel like the Jets might do what they did last year, maybe in the 3rd round or the 4th round where they were at the top and they kept moving back to get picks. I remember last year when they kept trading down, one of those picks turned into Braylon Allen, but I remember getting frustrated in the 4th round because the Jets are one of the first picks and I'm sitting there through all round 4 and just when the Jets got, oh no, they traded back again. Oh no, they traded back again. And I'm like, can you make a pick, please? Just so I can say you made a pick. Please make a pick. I'm begging you. But the draft strategy, I do think is maybe a trade down. I'm curious to see what type of player could be there where the Jets would be willing to trade out because a lot of needs. The one player maybe Will Johnson's interesting because if he's there at 42, there might be a team that at that point just says, look, he's one of the best corners, even with the injury issues. Let's just go up there and get him and make sure we have him. Another interesting thing could be the offensive line. The Jets have already addressed the offensive line position, but it also comes down to debate. Is it worth it to get more picks and lose out on a great player? Like, let's play this scenario. At 42, Mason Taylor's on the board, but a team calls and says, look, we really want Ursary from Minnesota. We're afraid he's going to go in the next few picks. We really want to get up there and make sure that we get our guy. So can you please trade back with us? We'll give you additional picks. Like when I look at the board right now, like I'm trying to remember who's exactly behind the Jets. I believe it is the Bears. Just give me 1 second. I just don't quote me on that yet. It's San Francisco. I got confused because I know Chicago had 2 picks. So San Francisco's behind the Jets at 43. I'm kind of curious who might want to come up and jump the 49ers. But is there a team, maybe San Francisco, maybe someone views that San Francisco, like let's say Johnson's there at 42, and let's say, just for saying, Cincinnati will never come up. They won't do that. Let's say Green Bay at 54 wants to come up because they know San Francisco is going to take Johnson. They really like him, and they'll give the Jets a third-round pick or a future pick next year. This Jet regime's going to have to determine, is it worth it to propel that far back? Is it worth it to drop 8 picks? Because when you trade back, yes, you get more picks, but then you could lose on a player you really wanted. But if the Jets also could be a scenario where it's a smart trade out, where maybe Taylor's gone, maybe the receivers they want are gone, and they're like, look, we had B+ grades on these guys, maybe an A- grade. All of our grades right now are Bs. We feel this is a B+, maybe even an A- spot, and a team really has value for this player to come up. Like, I think Johnson could be a very intriguing player there as well. Kayuka, Lake Jet fan. You see Jets going for wide receiver and the D tackle safety, not grabbing a tight end, maybe trade for Goddard, Mark Andrews. I mean, that to me could be a backup plan. If the board doesn't fall the Jets' way, I could see that being done. Now, I personally would go after Andrews because he's a bit younger, but it also depends on what the price is too. If they're willing to give a day 3 pick for one of those 2 players, I would do that. The big thing with that is how the board falls. If the Jets feel that they're going to get one of the best safeties in the draft at 42, who's going to instantly impact this defense on the back end, you do it. If there's a great D tackle there that they feel is going to instantly boost up this defense, they will do it. I do think receiver in this draft, there's a lot more depth of the wide receiver position, but I also could see the Jets, even if the Jets, let's play this game, if they traded for one of those tight ends, I could still see them drafting tight ends because it's a thin room on day 3. I mean, there's still some guys on day 3 I could see them going after. I could see Gunnar Helm from Texas. Oronde Gadsden II from Syracuse is someone especially they've worked out a lot. I think he's on their sights on day 3. I do think that there's some intriguing tight ends. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jackson Hayes from Georgia Tech. I know the Jets haven't done a lot of homework on him, but I love him as a blocking tight end, especially if they're going to run the ball this much. But, I mean, that's a possibility. I do think that's a smart way to attack and it's a good solution there. Do you think Justin Fields is a franchise quarterback, or is this a tank? I don't think it's a tank plan. I think that the Jets are giving Justin Fields the best chance, and I do think the Jets looked at it this way. They think, what is more likely to happen? Justin Fields, who's still 25 years old, still an incredibly dynamic athletic quarterback who's bounced around the league now, had some success last year in Pittsburgh, has a better chance of finally figuring it out after having years of experience in the NFL? Or do they take a dart throw on a quarterback class that really isn't that great? And again, I'm shocked the Titans did not trade for the Giants for Cam Ward. That was a ridiculous offer. mean, even Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's the best quarterback in this draft, but if it was in the previous year's draft, does Cam Ward even go before J.J. McCarthy? I mean, that's a really good debate, and that's like the fifth quarterback. So I think the Jets just looked at this class and said, yeah, we'll go with Justin Fields. And if we feel at the end of next season, Justin Fields is the guy, we'll look at a lot better quarterback class next year and go all in next year. If we fill out the roster this year and make it so we're a really good team and don't have to have a ton of holes, we can trade a lot of assets to go get a quarterback next year. So I do think that is definitely an option. I don't think they're not tanking. Aaron Glenn came here to win. Aaron Glenn is going to do everything he can to win football games this year. And I do think the Jets, yes, will probably not be a playoff team. I think that they will be a competitive team, but I don't think they're trying to tank and win 3 games next year. That is not in the plan. I don't think that's in Aaron Glenn's DNA. Memba was an easy pick. Who should I root for day 2 realistic? I would root for, if I had to, my top 3. All right, let me do it this way. Let me do my top 3 on the offensive side to root for and top 3 on the defense. Offense, Mason Taylor, Jaden Higgins in round 2. And for the 3rd round, I'll give you Kyle Williams. Defense, if Mike Green is somehow there at 42, I'm sprinting to that freaking podium. If Darius Alexander is there, I would go up to that podium. Nick Emanwari could be up there. I really like Elijah Roberts, especially the 3rd rounder. The thing with safety is I feel like the Jets can still get some quality safeties in this draft, even after 42. I just look, Xavier Watts, I think probably won't fall around 3, but I really like Kevin Winston Jr. in the 3rd round. I also like his running mate, Jalen Reed, who's probably a 4th rounder. I mean, the Jets also have done a lot of work with R.J. Mickens, the safety from Clemson. He's definitely a day 3 pick. I mean, I look at a lot of the safeties the Jets worked with. They looked for a lot of round 3 through 6 guys. There's not a lot of guys that were really top of the board. But I do think that the Jets will be very prudent. And again, if they have, let's say Emanwari is the top safety on their board and they have him as a top 15 player and he's there 42, I think the biggest thing is we're going to find out a lot about this team. I think my big thing when we came to this draft was the Jets were going to tell us how they were going to build this football team, what they valued. And it's clear this team wants to be great up front. They invest in the offensive line, where now you look at their offensive line where everyone's under 27. You have multiple first-round picks on the offensive line. That's going to be a football line that you can lean on late in the game. You can run the football behind. You can really be a smash-mouth football team. And really, when the Jets were great, they were a smash-mouth football team. Under Rex, under Eric Mangini when they made the playoffs, under Herm, the Jets were a physical, upfront football team on the offensive line that could run the ball incredibly well. And I think that's what they're trying to get back to. I think Aaron Glenn saw what Bill Parcells did, and they put a big emphasis on the run game. Because never forget, one of the biggest moves that Parcells made was getting Curtis Martin to the Jets. And that was to really have an elite ground game to help with the quarterback position. I think Aaron Glenn is going to look to do that. You look at the teams you want to emulate right now. It's the Lions. They put a lot on their offensive line, but they're a great team. You look at the Eagles. They put a lot on their offensive line. They're a great team. And you saw last night the teams that want to be great. Kansas City went offensive line. The teams that had mid offensive lines, they went for it. The Bears were a great example last night. And I called it. I said, Banks Jr. is going to be a top 10 pick. And people looked at me like I was crazy. Said, watch, he's going to go off the board early. I even said if Membu's not there, there's a chance he goes to the Jets at 7. He goes to the Bears. And I remember talking to a good Bears friend of mine, and I said, if there's a scenario where you could have a tight end or a tackle, who do you want? He said, easy tackle. Our tackles were terrible last year. I mean, don't forget, they had the chance. Actually, I'm sorry, it's Colston Loveland. Banks, I got the order mixed up. The Saints went with tackle. Colston Loveland went to the Bears. So that's my apology. I don't know why I got those two mixed up. But so again, you can let me know in the comments. I know I messed up. But once again, Banks goes to the Saints at 9. And then you have Loveland going to the Bears at 10. And a lot of it, too, is like I just look at it, the offensive line. Like there were some really good prospects. But look at the top 9 picks. The 9 picks. In the first 9 picks, 3 offensive linemen. Campbell 4, Membu 7, and then you have Starks going 9th. Yeah. I don't think Membu's a bust. I see that coming through. I think Membu's probably one of the safest picks in this draft. He's a guy that was really solid in pass protection. The biggest thing I look for at tackle is how are you at pass protection? And he has great feet, didn't allow pressure last year. And the big thing is he's got great size. He's a great athlete. And he's got good size where you don't have to worry about the weight. I think Becton was huge and you worried about the weight. I don't worry about that with Membu. But I do think you're going to see a run early on offensive linemen tonight. I'm very curious to see what happens to the board in front of the Jets because there is a lot of variables in front of the Jets tonight in determining what's going to happen at pick 42. Cleveland, to me, is the biggest one because Cleveland has 2 of the picks. Do they look to fill out the roster? Or do they take on Shedeur? I think Houston goes offensive line at 34. Tennessee, maybe go skill position, offensive line. I look at New England at 38. I wouldn't shock me if New England, again, I know they've invested a lot of money in the offensive line. They could go double dip offensive line, but they probably in that spot go defense to balance it out, maybe a skill position, wide receiver. Chicago also has 2 picks in front of the Jets, 39 and 41. And you also wonder, too, with those picks, with Cleveland 33 and 36, and with Chicago 39 41, especially 41, you wonder if Chicago is willing to trade back. Like the pick that scares me probably the most is 41. Because the Chicago can get a player they really like with 39, but then at 41, is there a team that wants to jump the Jets for Mason Taylor? Is there a team that's willing to come up and jump the Jets at that point with Chicago? Is there a team that also moves in front of the Jets that pushes the board down? I mean, Miami didn't go offensive line last night. They're at 48. Do they try to come up to one of the earlier picks with Chicago or Cleveland to try to get an offensive lineman that fell into round 2? And again, if a lineman's taken, that pushes some more of the skill position guys down the board. I mean, I'm really fascinated to see how the board falls. I really am. In the 3rd round, the Jets at 73. They have Chicago, New Orleans, Jacksonville, New England, Vegas. They don't have teams with multiple picks. They do have Kansas City at 66 in front of them. Giants now with 65 after the trade last night. So they'll be sitting at the top of the 3rd round. I'm curious to see if the Giants look to move back to get some picks. I also think the Giants, it'll be fascinating to see if Kayvon Thibodeau is a name that they try to move and trade tonight or tomorrow to maybe get more assets. Or maybe he's a guy they trade for future assets because I know they did extend the 5th-year option on him as well. So the big thing, too, is I also look at last night. Like I did call the Giants trading back into the 1st round. I did make that call in there, which I'm very proud of. Again, it was for the wrong quarterback, but I did have the Giants train back in. They get Jackson Dart. I worry about Jackson Dart to the Giants. I'm just going to go off a little tangent here about the Giants. I think that the Giants did the one that they had to get a quarterback. They had to. And I think at that point, they took the one with the most upside. The thing I worry about it is he comes from a very pass-happy offense where it's very easy for the reads. Again, I know the cadence is just the clap. So, again, not doing a lot of pre-snap calls. Dart, to me, is a kid. A lot of these kids in this draft, I think, really need to sit. And I just worry for Dart because I think he's going to get pushed into it. I know the Giants are already taking heat for this. I mean, I heard it all morning about the Giants drafting Dart and how they were eviscerated. But look, the Giants and the staff are desperate. They need hope. And if Russell Wilson doesn't work out, their break glass in case of emergency now is Jackson Dart. And their big selling point, I think, is going to be If they bring in Jackson Dart the last 8 games and he looks really good and they win some football games and they're outside the playoffs, but they're trending in the right direction, that's going to save their jobs. Like, that to me is why they had to get the quarterback. But he scares me, though. He reminds me so much of Zach. He reminds me so much of Zach. And I hope he's coachable. I think he's got a lot of the upside. I think physically his mobility is better than Shedeur. I think that the Giants didn't want to have that pressure around with Shedeur, but they made their bed. They went with Jackson Dart. And I do think that the Giants, of course, had a big night to get Abdul Carter with pick 3. There was a lot of interesting picks last night. I do think that the Jets didn't make the right pick with Membu. I'm kind of wondering, too, how many teams had Colston Loveland as the number 1 tight end on their board? I know he went ahead to the Bears at pick 10. He did go to the Colts at 14, but I'm very curious. I don't think we'll ever know the answer, but did the Jets have Colston Loveland as a higher-ended tight end on their board, too? I don't think they did, but I'm very interested. There's only one target that matters, and that's Turd Ferguson at pick 73. You love that Turd Ferguson, Kevin. You just rolling with that. Look, I think he could be there at 73. The other guys I would keep an eye on are Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State. I think Joshua Farmer, the D tackle from Florida State. Elijah Roberts, the edge from SMU. Ferguson, like you said, and Kyle Williams. Like, those are the names. Like, we don't know how the board's going to fall tonight. I have a feeling there's going to be 2 or 3 of that group of guys there, and that's who the Jets are going to go after. But, I mean, there's a case, too. Maybe guys like Xavier Watts, there's a chance. I love the kid. Maybe he falls to the early day 3. Not in the early day 3, round 3. That's a possibility, too. We do not know. Gins played it scared. They aren't winners. Yeah, like again, Giants fans, like I know that there's this history the Giants have over the Jets, but the last 12 years they've been the same teams. They've been teams that can't figure out the quarterbacks. They've been teams that have gotten desperate, and people keep saying, "Oh, the Giants aren't the Jets." What happened with the Jets? They got desperate in trade for Aaron Rodgers. What's happened now with the Giants? They've gotten desperate and they had to go get Jackson Dart. Like, it's one of those things, too, where, to me, the reason Jackson Dart was drafted isn't because they necessarily believe he's a franchise quarterback. If the Giants truly believed that Jackson Dart was a slam dunk franchise quarterback, number 1, they wouldn't have offered all those picks to go up to number 1 to Tennessee to get Cam Ward. Number 2, they wouldn't have chanced it, and they would have taken him at number 3, even though Abdul Carter was there, because the quarterback's that important. And finally, they waited until the end of the first round to go up and get him just to have the 5th-year option. Like, they chanced it too, because the Steelers didn't take a quarterback. That really threw off the whole draft at 21 was the Steelers. And I kept saying the Broncos would be the trade-up spot for the Giants because they had to get in front of the Steelers to get their quarterback. I mean, the Giants are lucky that the Steelers didn't fall in love with Jackson Dart. But that also tells you another thing, which I'd be concerned with the Giants. If you're in a draft, you have all those teams in front of you that could use a quarterback but passed, what does that tell you potentially? It tells you it tells you that no one loved this quarterback class. It tells you that right there. And the further we got in this draft, I just looked at it and I went like, I could have seen, I knew a quarterback was going to go because some guy was going to come up and get the 5th-year option. But I just look at Jackson Dart. To me, this is probably, if all the places for him, to be honest, this is one of the best places for him because of the coaching staff. But I personally think he's going to have a tough time in the NFL. Kevin, to be honest, I think he's the best player available. I think it's going to be offense, but if there's a great defensive player there, like if Mike Green is there from Marshall, I'm sprinting to that podium. I'm just going to. If the kid from Toledo, Alexander's there, 42, I think that's another great player at 42. It depends. We're going to see how they value teams, and especially skill positions. I'm curious to see how the Jets are going to attack. I go see them trading out of 42. Maybe they feel like there's a lot of good B players in this draft, so get an extra pick or two to fill out this roster. And the hard part, too, is like I give you like a range of players. I don't know what's going to happen in front of them. I think there's a chance it could be defense because I look at the teams in front of them. You have Cleveland with 2 picks. You have Chicago with 2 picks. Does Chicago use one of them on offensive lineman? Probably. They probably use one on the pass rusher. I don't see Mike Green probably getting past the Bears in some capacity. I look at Cleveland. Do they take Mike Green to pair with that great defense? Now they got Mason Graham. Now they got Mike Green. Now they got a hellacious defensive front. I mean, I could see that happening. The big thing is I think we're going to see who comes up in the top of the second round, how the Shedeur effect throws everything off, and also what's going to be a run of players. When I look at the teams in front of the Jets, my feeling is it's going to be probably more skill position and offensive line. So that raises a great question, which is, if a great defensive player falls to you, do you take him? Because, I mean, I could easily see that we're sitting there and Nick Emmanwori is sitting there. Many thinks the best safety in this draft is sitting there at 42. You're sitting there, you're going, do we take him here? I mean, one of the big debates will be if Emmanwori is there and Mason Taylor's there. The tight end that we really want and the safety. And you're sitting there going, damn, that's a tough decision to make. But there's going to be a lot. And I just am very curious because the other big thing with Cleveland and the Bears in front, I think that they're going to I know what Mo Dean wants. Mo wants Shedeur Sanders. Look, that's not happening. I doubt Shedeur will go to the Jets. If he does, I'll tip my cap, or I guess in this case, my wig to you, Mo. But look, this is going to be a crazy round 3. I think a lot of this is going to come down to how the board falls in front of the Jets, and the teams I watch especially are the Bears and Cleveland. Do they pick where they are? Do they trade one of their picks back so a team can jump the Jets to maybe take a player the Jets wanted? Or do they there's a world where they trade both those picks to move back and players the Jets really wanted get off the board? I think we're going to learn a lot more by the end of the night how this team values draft picks, how this team values roster construction, and what positions. If they draft the safety early, it's telling you they value the safety position a lot more than the previous regime. If they go skill, they are admitting they need to address the skill positions in this team. There's a world, too, where they could maybe even go defense in both these picks. I mean, I could come on tonight and say the Jets got the number 1 safety, got a great defensive lineman in the 3rd round, and I think a lot of the fan base would be pissed. Because even though they got great value and great players where they did, they're going to say, now we still don't have a receiver, we still don't have a tight end, and we're going into day 3. And I do think there's some intriguing guys on day 3 that could still make an impact for this team. The big thing, though, is the Jets take great value. Get the best players you can and build out this roster. But we will have more on that tonight because, again, like I've been telling you, and again, this is why you want to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss this. Tonight, we are going live after the Jets' final pick. So whether it is at pick 73, whether it's they trade down, heck, if they trade out, once they trade out, we will go live. We'll talk about the picks. We'll talk about how the board fell, and we'll also lay out the storylines for day 3. Because like after day 1, like we discussed last night, it dictated how we looked at today. We now know they got the tackle yesterday. They figured out the tackle position. We were focused on the skill positions. Tomorrow, is this an all offensive night? Do we focus all on defense for day 3 or the majority of day 3? Do the Jets surprise us and take a quarterback potentially to develop? I do think that this will be an intriguing draft tonight, and I cannot wait to discuss who the Jets take in the second round, who they take in the third round, and if they trade, going over the value that they got in those trades. And again, don't also rule out that there could be some Baron trades. I don't think Breece Hall gets traded, but maybe the Jets surprise us and trade for a tight end. Maybe they trade for a Mark Andrews. Maybe they trade for a Dallas Goedert. Maybe they trade one of their day 3 picks for that. We will have to see. We'll break all that down later tonight. So make sure you join us here for the wrap up of night 2 on Rich Sports Talk. We're coming back to you tonight to break down round 2 and round 3 on day 2 for your New York Jets. We'll see you guys later tonight. Have a great one.